Well, we're glad to see so many show up. This is a great turnout. Thank you so much for coming over, enjoying this part of it, and I know you'll enjoy the film. John's music has been a big part of my life, as you can imagine, especially for the last 16 or so years. We've been doing this full time, and it's wonderful to share the music in a live concert. It's even better to see it produced into a film. You know that there are 5 movies this past year that have used a John Denver song in it. And so it's nice to see it kind of resurging that way. I'm not sure I agree with how they used it. Kind of strange in some cases. Aliens, had it. Oak Jaw, one of the most unusual Annie song scenes I've ever seen. It's a giant what is it called? Genetically modified pig with a hippo. That's this huge thing as big as a Volkswagen bus plowing through a mall in slow motion while John Denver's Annie song plays.
It was very disconnected.
But we'll take what we can get.
And you won't be disconnected with this next
not at
movie.
all.
It's so beautifully made and presented, and I know you'll love it.
So after the show, I'll be helping host the Q&A afterwards with Lee Holdridge, the music director of the film, the producer, Elisa Justice, and the director, Ken Shapiro. So stick around afterwards for a little Q&A. But here's one of my early favorite songs. It's a great way to look at living life. And John's music was always uplifting. You know, it left you with a lot of hope. This is called Poems, Prayers, and Promises. I've been lately thinking about my lifetime, all the things I've done, and how it's been. And I can't help believing in my own mind. I know I'm gonna hate to see it end. I've seen a lot of sunshine, slept out in the rain, spent a night or two all on my own. And I've known my lady's pleasures and had myself some friends, spent a time or two in my own home. And I have to say it now, it's been a good life all in all. It's really fine to have a chance to hang around, lie there by the fire and watch the evening tire while all my friends, my old lady, sit and pass the pipe around and talk of poems and prayers and promises and things that we believe in. How sweet it is to love someone, how right it is to care, how long it's been since yesterday. What about tomorrow? And what about our dreams and all the memories we share? Days, they pass so quickly now, nights are seldom long, and time around me whispers when it's cold. The changes somehow frighten me, still I have to smile. It turns me on to think of growing old. For though my life's been good to me, there's still so much to do. So many things my mind has never known. I'd like to raise a family, I'd like to sail away and dance across the mountains on the moon. And I have to say it now, it's been a good life all in all. It's really fine to have a chance to hang around and lie there by the fire and watch the evening tide while all my friends and my old lady sit and watch the sun go down and talk of poems and prayers and promises and things that we believe in. How sweet it is to love someone, how right it is to care, how long it's been since yesterday. What about tomorrow? What about our dreams and all the memories we share? Thank you so much. Enjoy the movie.
Jim Curry, ladies and gentlemen, Jim Curry, Ed Curry, and Diane Ireland. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Jim, while returning on the stage, I would just like to say he just got the biggest compliment, and I had to kind of laugh. Someone just walked in, and I will not out you because I don't want to embarrass you. She came up to me and hugged me and said, "Oh dear God, is that John Denver?" I'm not making this up. I said, "No, sadly, he's been gone for a few years. But clearly, it's Sedona, so anything is possible. We can channel John Denver. He has arisen from the ashes." So that's a great, great compliment. Please give a nice round of applause. Jim Curry, I am not making that story up. It was October 1st. We had a fundraising event out at George and Earl's Indian Creek Ranch, and they were the entertainment. We had a wonderful country western evening, and had Jim Curry and the band do the John Denver show. And afterwards, backstage, he said to me, "You know, my really great friend, Kenny Shapiro, has done a great film called Great Voices Sing John Denver. We're leaving for Aspen to go do the show up in Aspen. I'm gonna moderate a Q&A. Do you think we should have it for the film festival?" And I said, "My gosh, we have a lot of John Denver fans. I would love to. Hook us up." So the very next day, I had a wonderful email from Jim Curry hooking me up to Kenny Shapiro. He's right over there, the director and writer of the film. And he sent me a link. Yes, give a nice round of applause. You'll meet the rest of the entourage after the show as well. And I fell in love with the film. I really did, and you're gonna understand why tonight. And we had so much fun with this film because you have no idea until you see a film like this just how many people are influenced, inspired, moved by John Denver music. And when you see the performers and their take and their interpretation, and you're gonna get to meet the composer and the arranger of what you're about to see afterwards in the Q&A, Lee Holdridge, it's gonna be absolutely a phenomenal experience for you. We are the host venue for the Met Live Opera at our Mary D. Fisher Theater, and a couple of operas ago, I started promoting the fact we were gonna have this film, and you should have seen the blank looks on the opera lover's face. Some of you are in the room. When I stood up and said, "Now there's a film in our festival I don't want you to miss. It's Great Voices Sing John Denver," to opera lovers. And I said, "But wait, you gotta see the people in here. Some opera greats, Placido Domingo Jr., Matthew Polenzani, and all sorts of wonderful women, leading ladies in the opera, leading men in the opera. It is a who's who that you would never suspect performing John Denver songs, and it is gonna blow your mind. Thank you for being here. Stick around for a Q&A with an amazing group of people. Please enjoy Great Voices Sing John Denver.
Come on out to the stage here. Welcome Lee Holdridge, Elisa Justice, and Ken Shapiro. I find this movie moving in so many ways, and it has taken a simple art form of John's folk music and those early years with just John and his guitar, and moved it into another art form with the opera, and then yet again to this beautiful, beautiful piece of art that you have created. So, yes. Thank you. I want to start this off because I think it's obvious what Lee Holdridge does. Well, it's not obvious, but it's clear what he does. It's an amazing thing that he does with the music and the arrangements and the composing. And Ken here as the director, especially this audience, is very clear on what a director does. But as producers, there were other producers in the show, but I would like to pose a question to Elisa as a producer, how you came to be involved in this and what it is that specifically your role was in putting this all together.
Well, it all started at a lunch with Milt and Rosemary Oken. They'd invited Lee and I to this lunch, and Milt turned to me and started to tell me about this project. And I have been involved with the Metropolitan Opera National Council for 24 years as an audition co-director. And so he knew that. So he was telling me about all these opera singers singing John Denver's music. And he knows I love opera singers. What he didn't know is that I love John Denver and have since I was a kid. So he looked at me after telling me about this project that he was thinking of doing, and he said, "So what do you think?" And I said, "God, that sounds fantastic." He goes, "Good, I'm glad you like the idea, because I want you to co-produce it with me." So, I mean, it was such a shock, because he never let on what this luncheon was all about. So my role was to basically get all the singers. Now, he had a group that he wanted, and I had a group that I wanted to bring in. So thank goodness, working with Milt was just a delight. We seemed to be, there was a meeting of minds. We seemed to be on the same page. So when I brought up Shen Yang, he said absolutely. When I brought up Renee Pape, he said yes. So I went about writing all the letters to all the agents, and then it was a waiting game. We had to sit and wait to hear from all these agents. And finally it started to come in. And that's how it all started.
Wow.
To you three, I want to say thank you. My name is Lou. I live in Sedona. I've never really been into music. I'm more into sports, like watching the Super Bowl or the Olympics. And I can tell you, I enjoyed tonight's performance more than anything I've ever watched, more than any Olympics, more than any Super Bowl. Thank the three of you for this wonderful.
I have to say something. Sorry. I have to say a little something. If you notice, and speaking of Olympics and everything, the dedication and the care, one thing about, you might notice about these singers, you have an eye into the work that they do, the preparation. Did you notice how carefully the words are sung and how they choose the inflection? They really, really spend, and that's what's beautiful about it. It brings those lyrics right out to you, and that's why it hits you, because a lot of times those words on the radio, you know, you're driving a car, there's trucks going by, whatever. But suddenly here, you're like up close and personal, and you're like, wow, that's what that song says. You see, it's very beautiful, it's very touching.
I want to say before we leave, I want a big thanks to Pat for inviting us.
Yes.
Because without that, and this is really an amazing film festival, you guys don't get to see this. And this is for us to see how you react and how you enjoy the film. It helps what our initial thought was to keep John's music alive and to keep it going. So thank you, Patrick. Really spectacular. So
Thank you.
I had a mutual friend by the name of Bill Mitchell, who was a good friend of John's. And I met him right after John had passed and from the accident. And I want to thank you because he said to me at the time, he said, you know, John was very hurt when he was not included in We Are the World.
Yes.
And it hurt me so deeply. So what you've done here is so fabulous because you did for him, you know, somewhere in songwriting heaven, he's looking down going, oh my gosh, you know, how great this was. It was his own We Are the World. So thank you so much for doing that. It was so awesome.
Thank you. Just one more thing I want to say to that. Milt Oaken, who we lost a little over a year ago, really expressed the passion into me initially, because when I first met him, I didn't even know his history and what he had done. He was a gentleman I met during working on an opera I was directing, and he told me he had this project, you know, someday we're going to do this project together. And I was like, sure, this sounds great, you know. And he called me one day and he goes, we're going to do this thing. And I go, great, when are we going to start? He goes, last week. But, you know, it's been his passion that drove me, and that's how I met Lee and Lisa and just all these people, and Jim Curry as well. It's been an amazing project all along the way.
Ken is very modest as a filmmaker because the producers said to him, now listen, you film this thing, but don't disturb the singers while they're singing. You know, you kind of. So he and his cameraman snuck around everywhere, taking shots of everything. I think it's an amazing piece of film work, don't you think? and by the way, I loved working with my wife. It was kind of like, at first I was like,
You never know what that's going to be like.
But it turned out to be fantastic because she is she has a lot of knowledge about singers and singing and opera singers and everything. I said, perfect. She would really understand. She would talk to them. Of course, she had the dirty job of talking to their agents, but we won't go there.
That is the hardest part.
That's the hardest part of it all. Yes.
I wanted to thank you for this work of your heart. It's quite obvious that that's where it comes from. And when I wanted to ask you, is there anything that you can share with us about how this shifted your own heart?
Well, you know, it goes back to all those years that I worked with John. We started working together in 1974. I didn't want to go there, but there you go. Anyway, it was a long time. We got along really well together. I loved his songs, but he loved the orchestra. Every time I brought like strings in, like Annie's song, he was fascinated by the whole thing. And he wanted to learn more about it. He never stopped learning. He would ask me, now why do the violas play that line, the violin line? He even got to the point later on, he'd say to me, I think this should be a good French horn line. I said, you know, you're right, it would be perfect. So he really loved the orchestra. He loved the songs, the sounds. When he worked with Domingo, he was blown away by that. He really noticed the way Domingo worked on the words and the nuances of the melody. If you listen to his singing after he worked with Domingo, he started paying also a lot more attention to the way he spoke and sang the words. So John was always a student. And I'm the same way. We're always students. We're constantly saying, well, we can do this better. And the fact that he loved it and we enjoyed it so much together. And I got to tell you, when we would go on tour, and you classical music lovers here, you'll know what I'm talking about. I would come in to rehearse some symphony orchestra, and there would be a lot of grumpy faces there, you know. We got to play these pop concerts with these pop artists. And then we would start playing the music. Now, I wrote really orchestral parts for John's songs. And then you could see them, sort of their eyes begin to, oh, we gotta play. Wait, we gotta pay attention. Wait, what is this? John would walk in to rehearse with them. And I gotta tell you, he would melt every single one of them. And they all had big grins on their face by the end of rehearsal. Some were tapping their feet. You don't see that in a symphony orchestra very often. But he was like a magnet. And he didn't do it out of ego. It was just who he was. I tell people, John had his demons, he had his problems, but when it came to being on stage and being the singer-songwriter, that was purity to him. That was the water fountain of pure, clear water. And he loved it, and he cared for it, and I wish he could have seen this movie. I figured out a way that I would make rehearsal demos in my MIDI studio in my home of the song, and I would send it to the singers, and they would feedback, say maybe a tone lower or something, whatever. We got it all pre-worked out ahead of time, and I went in and we recorded the orchestra at various different intervals, and then we went out. Elisa and I chased these people all over the place, mostly New York, like you said, but all the cities.
We would get them when they were singing at the Met, and they'd have, like, for example, Thomas Hampson was coming in for his son's wedding, and he said, I have a couple of hours on Friday. He said, well, take it. But that's how it was with most of them,
And I think Milt used to refer to, because of all the orchestra sessions, and any time you have an orchestra recording a session, the multiple times that we did, Milt always referred to it as like the most expensive CD ever made. That's all I know about it.
But there was a lot of love that went into it, and care. And every single line that the orchestra's playing, John, somewhere in there is the guitar lines that John played, but they're now in the orchestra and the strings and woodwinds and brass and everything like that. So, so it doesn't lose his music, it's all right there. I used to say to him, sometimes we'd be working together, I'd say, you know, John, I could play your music with just a symphony orchestra. And he said, really? I said, absolutely. I said, it would work just fine. And I think in a way, I think of Ray Vaughan Williams, who did the English folk song suite, and Aaron Copland did American folk song suites. This is my American John Denver folk song suite. In RCA's entire history, Elvis Presley was their #1 seller, John Denver was their #2 worldwide. But somehow that was never recognized, and it frustrated him. And you hear that little story in the movie when they brought him Perhaps Love, and RCA said, no. And so Milt took the song Elsewhere and recorded it with Domingo and John, and it became a big hit. And so he loved music, he loved what he did. He had a lot of problems in his life. He loved flying. He landed here in Sedona many times. He was here many, many, many times, because he knew the airport. He was always drawn to it. But the accident was a sad thing that happened. He was flying an experimental plane and they had problems with it. And what can I say? And I used to say to John, you have a Learjet, you have a Cessna, you have all these wonderful planes, why are you messing around with these other planes? Just fly the good ones. But he liked living on the edge, He was one of those people that would ski off the helicopters in the Rocky Mountains up in Canada. And I couldn't understand why he wanted to do that, but he loved always challenging himself. But he was frustrated a little bit. He was frustrated. So this would be, he'd be thrilled. He would be thrilled beyond,
Okay, Lee Holdridge.
Yes.
I understand that you and Jim Curry have collaborated with symphony orchestras in different parts of the country. Can you speak to that for a little bit?
Yes, well, John Denver's arrangements were lost a few years ago. All those orchestral scores that I had done, when he died, the people that were managing the estate thought it was just old paper. So that all disappeared. Fortunately, I'm a little bit of a nutcase. I had saved copies of all my original scores and had them stashed up in my library. Now, we're going to light a torch to Jim Curry because he stepped up to the plate. He wanted to start performing these songs again with the original arrangements. And when I told him this story, he said, well, we'll just have to reconstruct them. So he started having these arrangements copied. You know, the original ones that I wrote, translated back into computer, into digital, into Sibelius. So they are all preserved. They are all there. They are alive thanks to Jim Curry. And that's so. So when he performs with an orchestra, he uses those arrangements with him singing. So it's very exciting. And I've had a chance to conduct once in a while with him. So I enjoy doing that.
Thank you.
Great.
One thing I wondered if you knew is that John Denver is kept very much alive in Baltimore at the Baltimore Orioles baseball games. They have been playing Thank God I'm a Country Boy for the 7th inning stretch for many, many years. And in 1992, when Camden Yards opened, they thought they should find a more up-to-date song. They tried out a lot of songs and none took, and they went back to Thank God I'm a Country Boy. And just a few weeks before John Denver's death, he was in Baltimore, and I was at the game when he danced on top of the dugout with the Oriole bird during the 7th inning.
The old classics never die. I have a quick comment. All you opera lovers, you know the song Per Te, For You. We did it in Italian with Matthew Polenzani doing the Italian version. Listen to it on the CD. I once played it for a few of my composer friends. I said, you know, we found this Puccini aria that has never been published before. And I put it on and they were, really, where did they find it? My gosh, what? Tell me, what's the story behind it? And they were going crazy. And then when I explained to them what they were like, oh boy.
And I don't want to embarrass you, and I'm also going to embarrass myself on this one, because, you know, in my position, all you do spending the 2 months leading up to the festival is everybody wants to know who's coming to the festival, what celebrities are coming to the festival, which makes me cringe, because if you really love independent film, it's about the films, not the celebrity. But we know that we have to have the celebrities, and they're awesome, and we bring in the eye candy. So everyone's always been asking me who we got coming in, And my standard answer, because what they want to know is Jane Alexander, Richard Dreyfuss, Pierce Brosnan, James Brolin, Sybil Shepherd. So my box office manager, Lori Reinhardt, comes in the office and she said, oh my God, do you realize who you have coming to the festival? And I said, yeah, you should know, Pierce Brosnan, Jane Alexander, Sybil Shepherd. My husband is so excited. You got Lee Holdridge coming to the film festival. He's a filmmaker and he's in awe of you. So I just want you to know, you are the celebrity of this film festival, so we appreciate that. And Kenny and Elisa, thank you. Jim Curry, thank you. And Kenny has to escape tonight to go and produce a little thing called the Oscars. And I just want to plant this seed, Kenny. I love these people, but if you ever asked me to come to the Oscars during Film Festival week, I would bag them in a heartbeat. Just to let you know. Ladies and gentlemen, great voices, sing John Denver. Thank you. Jim, Kenny, Elisa, and Lee, thank you all so very, very much.